Welcome back to NetLab 02, installing and configuring an ESXi host. I'm Richard Golson, and I'm going to walk you through task 3, which is enabling the ESXi Shell and Secure Shell. So in this task, we're going to configure our VMware ESXi host to enable the ESXi Shell and Secure Shell. With this enabled, we can run commands or scripts on the ESXi host in a secure fashion. By default, the ESXi Shell and Secure Shell service are disabled. So we'll be able to enable those shells to troubleshoot issues that may arise locally. We can open a Secure Shell port, but keep in mind that this could pose a potential security risk, so we should enable these only as needed and then disable them after the required task is completed. So we'll do the enablement and disablement through the DCUI. So we can see over here that the DCUI, as I was speaking, kind of went to sleep, so I need to bring that back up again. So I'll go ahead and click within it and then hit the return key. And you'll notice that it's saying, hey, look, you're trying to change the password. So I need to press escape because I don't want to do that. So I'll hit the escape key, give it a moment. That's because I had configure password highlighted when I hit the return key and I couldn't see that. So no big deal. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to my troubleshooting options. We're going to take a look at those now. So now that I've got troubleshooting options highlighted, I'll hit return or enter for more. And then the first option is to enable the ESXi shell. And you can see it says enable ESXi shell. It doesn't say it's enabled. And you can see on the right-hand side in gray that it's the current state of the shell is disabled. So in order to change the state, I simply hit the enter key. So I'll do that now and give it a moment. And you'll see that on the left side in yellow, it now says disable ESXi shell. So if I hit the enter key, it would disable it. We can see on the right-hand side in gray, in the gray section, it says the ESXi shell is enabled. And so I can see that current state is enabled. So that's what I wanted to do. And if you just hit the return key or the enter key, it just toggles them back and forth. You can see if I hit the return key again, you'll see that the left and the right sides change again. So just make sure that you hit the enter key such that on the left side in the yellow, we can see that it says that I can disable the ESXi shell, but it is currently enabled. And this is what I want to see. I want to make sure that this says it's enabled. I'll do the same thing with the SSH. I'll hit my return key and ensure that the current state is enabled. That's good. Now, there's some other options I want to take a look at really quick because these are really the only two options in this section that we needed to make adjustments to. At this point, we've modified those. I want to take a look at some other troubleshooting options while we're in here. So if I drop down to the modify DCUI idle timeout, what's really kind of neat about this is that I can actually modify this and set it in minutes and change it from the default of 10 minutes. So the current value for this is 10 minutes. If I don't touch it, DCUI goes to sleep. And that might be too long. It might be that it would actually be better to have a shorter period of time, meaning that if I'm not touching it, it should go to sleep in 5 minutes. So if you have some kind of security regulations that says, hey, you know what, we need to make sure that things log out, interfaces log out within a specified period, we can check, we can set this setting to that, and it is in minutes. I'm going to go ahead and hit escape without modifying it. The other one is the restart the management agents. And so when you're using the restart management agents, you're essentially indicating that you want to restart these agents that are programs that allow remote management software to monitor and control the host. And if you're using anything like that and you're finding that you need to break that connection and get it to restart, this is the way to do it. I'm going to leave that alone, so I'll press escape to exit. Now, while we're talking about troubleshooting, I do want to show you that there's an option here that's not discussed, which is the test management network. And so if I hit the return key here, let's take a look at what it does. Now, by default, this is going to test. This test will attempt to ping my default gateway. So you can see the very first address is the default gateway and my DNS servers, and to resolve this host name. So it's going to try to do all of these. So you can also get it to ping other interfaces as well. So we can say, hey, let's see if something else will also accept a ping, like this address right here. This is another one of my ESXi servers, .51. So, and let's see which ones will actually respond to my ping. And resolving the host name. In practice, some of this may not work in NetLab, but it's kind of a neat way of testing to ensure that we get responses back to some of these requests. I can even try to ping the local interface, and let's see what that does. And that's this address here, the local address. So I'll go ahead and hit the return, okay, and let it run through the pings. And again, this is a great way of testing. So you can see I got an okay on all of these. So this is wonderful. And if we were testing this to ensure that it had access to an external IP address, like a configuration server or something like that, then I could have put that address in there as well. Make sure it could pass these ping tests. All right, let's go ahead and hit the return key and leave that. So that's your testing your management network. Okay, so let's look at one more item for use during troubleshooting, and that is the system logs. We can see here that we can view the system logs. Let's go ahead and select that here. And we'll see that there are 6 logs. There's a syslog, a kernel log, etc. To access any one of the logs, we'll press the corresponding number for that log, and then that will open the log using the less utility, which is a pager. So let's take a look at that now. Let's go ahead and view the syslog. So when you open the syslog, you'll see that you start at the top of the log, and we can scroll up and down the logs using the up and down arrow keys on the keyboard. But the log is pretty lengthy. And so if you wanted to get to the bottom of the log, then you could actually press the G key, the uppercase G key. By pressing the uppercase G key, we go to the very end of our log, and we can see what's down there, and then we can scroll back upward a little bit if we want. If I use the lowercase g key, that'll take me back to the top of the log. Now, that's great for jumping around in there, but what if you were looking for a specific item? So we could search for that specific item. Remember, this is the less utility, so if you've ever used the less paging utility on Linux, it uses the same set of command keys, etc. If I'm unsure what those keys are, I could press the H key on my keyboard. You can see that down here on the bottom. This gives you a little bit of an explanation. So using the H key will allow me to access the help menu. So now I can see the summary of less commands in the help menu. And you can use this to figure out how to move around. Now, you'll notice there's a section for moving, there's a section for searching, etc. When I'm done looking at this help menu, I can simply press the Q key on my keyboard to leave that. And then if I'm done working with the syslog, I can press the Q key again to quit. Now let's go back in syslog and let's look for evidence of the change in the IP address. This is handy if you detect something has been changed and you'd like to find out when it occurred and then maybe track down who might have done that, etc. So let's take a look at that now. So I'm going to go back into syslog. So I'll press my 1 key. And then what I'm going to do is use a regular expression. Now remember, it opens at the top, so it's going to search from the top down. And I'm going to use a regular expression. You can see that right over here at the bottom. Okay, there's my regular expressions. So what I'm going to need to do is press the / and then type in a string. And what I'm going to do is press in the / and then type in the IP address, the new IP address. So let me do that now. Pressing my /. Now that means that I'm going to enter a regular expression, a string of characters following this, and I want it to search for this string. So I'll type in the IP address that I entered the new IP address that was entered previously. And so that's the IP address that has been set for this server. So I'll go ahead and press the return key. And you can see here at the top of the screen the log that shows when this IPv4 address was set. You can see the date and timestamp right here. And it says setting IPv4 configuration to this new address on VM kernel port 0. So great, now I know when that occurred. All right, when I'm done looking at this log, I can go ahead and press Q to quit. Now, let's take a look at the ESXi observation log, or the VOBD log. I want to see evidence of the secure shell interface being made available. So I'll go ahead and press the 6 key. And again, it opens at the top of the log. Again, it's going to use less to display my log items. So I'm going to go ahead and use a / and type in SSH. And let's see if we do an SSHD. We can see if we get evidence of the secure shell daemon being activated. So I'll hit the return key. And it says pattern not found. So I'll press return again. Let me try just SSH and see if I can find that pattern. I'll hit return. And so we can see here we have a lot of items listed on here. And we can see that firewall configuration changed, operation add for rule set. And if I use my N key, what it will do is it will scroll through and show me each of the entries for secure shell. And you can see that at the very top line here, it says that secure shell access has been enabled. And so we can see that that's showing up in my log. And it's got actually a couple different entries for the user level correlator, one for a generic correlator. This is vob.user. This is ESX.audit. And then you'll also see there's evidence that it was disabled, and that's because previous to this video, I actually enabled and disabled it, etc. So you can see each time that it was enabled and disabled, you're going to get an access record or a record of that enablement and disablement. All right, so there you go. So now we can see evidence that the ESXi or the SSH was enabled. We can also see one for the shell here. Let's see if we can find that one. I believe we have one in here that shows the command line shell. Here it is, the ESX command line shell. Enabled, disabled. So each time you enable and disable it using those keys, it shows that. All right, let's go ahead and quit here. And that takes care of troubleshooting. We're done with task 3. So when we come back, we're going to take a look at task 4 in the lab, looking at how to add ESXi host to Active Directory.